Hello, folks. Hi, everyone. Hello, listeners. Hello, co-host. Welcome back to Sembang Songsang. Let's give ourselves a round of applause.
Hey, welcome back.
Welcome back, Sembang Songsang. We're doing a little differently today.
Yay.
We're online because we are 21st century citizens. So thanks, everyone, all the listeners for joining us again. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We're glad to have you here. If you are a returning listener, gosh, you're so obsessed with us. Thanks for being here as well. Yeah, so we're here. We're a podcast, amongst also the podcast. We talk about current affairs and issues affecting the queer community in Malaysia while making it, approachable and connecting to lived experiences of queer people. So I'll introduce the folks here today with us. So I'm Dia. I was here last episode. Actually, all of us from the last episode are here. So Dia here from Jajaka, pronouns he, they. You want to introduce yourself, Pang?
Hi, I'm Pang. Happy to be here. Excited and a little bit nervous to talk about today's topic. You'll see why. Over to you, Thilaga.
Okay, I guess I'm Thilaga. Yeah, happy to be here with everybody too. Okay, what are we talking
Yeah.
about?
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of our discussion, maybe we just do a little recap of our last episode where we created a bit of a what was the name? Sembang Songsang playlist. And I maybe just wanted to hear from you folks. Were there any that by the way, the playlist is hella long.
I'm
I
sorry.
don't
I'm
know.
sorry.
Yeah. I wasn't gonna name names, but yes, Pang, you are guilty. So maybe Pang, you can tell me maybe just two songs that you're happy that you really want people to listen to. I know you put in a
What?
bunch, but maybe just tell me two.
What? Uh, oh my God, you're putting me on the spot. Uh, Wait. I just want to say that it became like a competition between me and a friend.
Okay.
Yeah. He's very knowledgeable about all kinds of pop songs, especially queer pop songs, and he's a walking
Yeah,
archive. I
I
Mm.
would
can
use him
tell.
as a yeah, yeah. Uh, so there was a very interesting point where we were debating whether we want to keep the playlist more party, right? More upbeat, people can dance to it because we don't sad pride, right? But that would mean actually getting rid of very important songs like Leslie Cheung's uh, War, which translates to I, which was technically, well, I mean, it's considered his coming out song. It's basically he started the song with the line from another song from the Birdcage, Lakash Falls, right? Where the song says, I am what I am. So Leslie Cheung started that
Mm.
song with saying, I am what I am. And then he sings in Mandarin, and there's also a Cantonese version, a song about him. He said, I am who I am. You just have to accept it. And the music video is him walking alone in the desert very beautifully. Yeah. So we took the song out and then we decided this song is too important, so we put it back. One more. Oh my God.
From the
Now I need to find.
30-hour playlist,
30.
Is it 30 hour now? Uh,
I think it's 39.
Almost 40.
Yeah, it's for like
let's
a.
talk about
Mm-hmm.
Dato Sri Vida's song. I am me.
Mm,
Moi, 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 moi.
yeah.
So yeah, I mean that there's really no other song like that in Malaysia, I think. That is just so self-declarative, right? Like I am me, but here are all my kisses. Yeah.
Yes, we love a local diva. What about you, Tilaga? Was there anything that really stood out to you in the playlist?
I mean, I was happy to see Janet Jackson's. What was the Janet Jackson song?
Together again.
Yes, I was like, oh, that is exciting. And then I ended up like listening, going down the rabbit hole of Caesar Sisters and and like Okta Okta and all of that. I suppose, yeah, I was quite excited to see Janet Jackson and
Mm,
all the stuff from like, the local divas and queens, right? From like Yuna to like
mm.
Fauzia Latif. Like, I thought that was like quite interesting to see, like how people identify with them as like the local divas and queens and whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and side note, right, that Fauzia Latif song that was included is Aku Masih Seperti Dahulu. And it was written by Mama Jui, and I think it won the Juara Lagu, Anugerah Juara Lagu. I think. And and Mama Jui is a beloved entertainment writer from the 80s, right? Yeah, and 90s, and they were very genderqueer even at that point, and they were considered the most one of the most famous lyricists working at that time. And this song was one the iconic one. Aku masih seperti dahulu. I'm still like before. Yeah,
I love
I
that
think that's a
song.
bad translation.
No, that's totally fine. Yeah, no, I just wanted to bring folks' attention back to the playlist. If you want to give it a listen, you should. If you have 40 spare hours. I just want to shout out, I'll give a very basic answer here, but I did love that Natasha Bedingfield's Unwritten was there, you know, because who doesn't want to feel their rain on their skin? Um,
Was it a
yeah.
shampoo commercial? That song was the soundtrack to everything, right?
Oh, yes, everything. It's a popular song, but there's a reason why it's so popular. It's such a classic, right? So, yes. And as we, wrap up talking about the Sembang Songsang Pride playlist, I mean, that also marks the end of Pride Month in June because it's already July now. But of course, as we always say, and that was the kind of message that we did last episode, that Pride doesn't always have to end on the 30th of June, because there's other queer-related dates coming up, one of which is International Non-Binary Day. I think it's a whole week actually. The day is July 14th, and then the non-binary awareness week is the July 13th till July 19th. So to all you NBs listening, we are dedicating this to you. Yes. And oh, there's also Drag Day apparently, right? July 16th,
Yep.
Drag Day. We are hopefully going to have a very special episode for that, I think. Right, folks? Teasing. Am I not allowed to tease this? I don't know. I'm teasing anyway. Yes, but look forward to the next podcast. Okay, so let's get into what we're talking about today. And I think there's two main things. Well, not two, but like one main thing that we're talking about, mainly the elections. Jang, jang, jang.
I love the fact
Scary.
that you come with soundtrack.
I have to, yeah. Unless our editor can put in the soundtrack in post. Exactly.
Jazz hands.
So as folks are aware, we are going to a very eventful time with state elections, but also federal elections, right? And I think it's important that we want to talk about these things, right, as queer people, because usually when we talk about elections, there's often an overemphasis on the federal level, right? But it's also important to understand that discrimination can happen also at the state level. So it's really important that we also keep a close eye on what's happening in the state level. And even more so, because I think there's lots more developments also happening at the state level with more autonomy being given to state legislative assemblies. Because I think when it comes to elections, the things that we are observing, at least in recent years, is that state excos are now responding to LGBT issues as well, right? It's no longer just the federal government. There's also increasing levels of criminalization happening at the state level, not just at the federal level. Campaigns and other sort of policies like conversion practices, support services, and ecosystems also exist at the state level currently. So those all affect the lives of LGBT people every day. And we're also seeing increased use of state laws or also city council laws that are restricting spaces for queer people as well. So that's why it's really pivotal that we talk about these things. And we want to, have a conversation with each other, but also spark some discussion with listeners as well. Yeah. The elections for two states have been announced so far, like with concrete dates, which is the elections in Johor happening
Saturday.
oh, Saturday.
Yeah, this Saturday.
This Saturday. Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. And then
Yeah. That's why we're recording this today.
that's where we're going today. Yes. We're in no rush. So 11th July for Johor and then for Negeri Sembilan 1st of August.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's really important because I'm actually from Negeri Sembilan and that's where I am
Oh,
registered to vote. What about you folks? Are these state elections both of your states or no?
no. I
No?
am
Okay.
I'm like orang KL. So all this while, for all these years, I didn't have to know about like state elections. And then, and then I moved to Selangor, and then I decided, you know what, I should vote where I live. So I changed my address. I now vote in Selangor. Yeah, I only learned about state election and all that like recently, or like, maybe 10 years, 15 years back.
I see. And you,
Fun?
Kang,
Yeah,
also?
I'm from Malacca originally, but by the time I registered to vote, I was already living in KL, so I am a KL voter, which means we don't have that kind of representation
Mm.
that the state folks enjoy.
Yeah, so I guess let's get straight into it, shall
Mm.
we? I want to ask, Tilaga and Pang, are you folks, observing and keeping up with the current state elections? Looking at the campaigns, anything that's standing out to you, anything exciting?
To be honest, I don't normally follow state elections, except for Sarawak for some reason. Because my
Oh.
partner, my I have a partner who's from Sarawak, and Sarawak state election is always very dramatic. And Sabah, I guess, they're both very dramatic, with a lot of very last minute dramas that are happening. So it's like watching the World Cup. This time, I had to look them up for this episode. That's the extent of
Okay.
my research. Yes, yeah. So
So what
I
did
did
you look
hear a
up?
few ceramahs by Anwar, and I saw headlines of other ceramah. Very memorably, Anwar said whether they win Johor or they lose Johor, he's still going to be the prime minister. Which I thought, wow, why would you say it like that? Why? Yeah.
I mean, there are also a lot of ridiculous things that we are hearing, right? Like about Najib being freed. Like if and when I'm feeling Johor, Najib will be freed. And I mean that was like one thing that was being talked about. And also, I mean, I'm following a bit because also for this episode and very interesting conversations around race, religion, the whole thing about voting for Malay candidate, and then PAS coming out with like Jaga, Johor. So all
Mm.
this like really amped up, very intense Malay nationalist sort of sentiments that are coming out. Awani has been like covering the state election quite extensively through different programs. Although their LGBT reporting can be better, right? But for this, they are doing quite extensive stuff. So I also listened to something about data centers and things like that. And also, I guess there are new candidates who are like also putting out like different types of charamas, right? Than the typical charama politics. So that is also quite exciting. But one interesting thing is that, I think the conversation around what is happening in the state, when I look at this ceramah, is very little lah. There's a lot of political rhetorics and like things like that, right? But the discussion about the issues may be quite limited. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I know I said that I'm voting in Negeri Sembilan, but I've been keeping up more with Johor development.
Right?
It's just I don't know, it's just a bit more interesting with what's going on. You know, the seat contestants and things like that. Like Negeri Sembilan doesn't have as much diversity, I guess, because like as you said, we have Johor, we have new people, and like people from the activist space. I forget her name from Muda, but from the activist space going into politics, right? And that's always something fun and interesting to kind of watch, and to see,
Mm,
the kind of experience that they bring, what issues they're bringing up, and what their campaign is about.
mm,
So yeah,
Actually, it's also very interesting to listen to the pundits and also the even former politicians commenting, right? Ong Kiam Ming has
mm,
been making a lot of statements, about how BN is going to win big in Johor, and the leaders are in denial over the growing anti-Pakatan sentiment. He says very sensible things. So, I sometimes, like, most of the times, like, so, but uh, this time it sounds like, he might be right. Yeah. I really don't know. I'm not a election prediction expert, so I just listen lah. I mean, he sounds.
mm.
yeah.
I'm just saying that I have no other. I have nothing else to go on off, right? So Coming says this, I thought, oh, okay lah, maybe he's right.
Yeah, but I think this is one of the things that a lot of analysts and former politicians are talking about, right? Because I think if we look at the seat distribution, and I think Awani again has this like interesting database. You can see that BN and PH are contesting in all areas, right? So
Yeah.
definitely they have, yeah lah, they will win besar. If they win besar lah, PH or BN, right?
Mm.
And also because like I think the composition right now is also quite BN heavy. I think that's why maybe there's that confidence as well. And also there was like a lot of stuff around the on what's his name? What's his last name? The Menteri Besar. On Hafiz, is it? I don't know what's his name.
Hmm.
That guy uh, appears to be quite popular, and yeah. But I was also listening to Nick Nazmi earlier, and they are also like talking about being an opposition,
Mm.
a credible opposition, and they have their own data. So it's quite interesting to see how people are seeing or projecting the outcomes. Lah.
So now let's take a closer lens and look at what's actually happening on the ground with these two
Mm,
states, Johor and Negeri Sembilan, right? And I know we are based in Kuala Lumpur, a lot of us, but I think our work brings us around, and we have to kind of respond and look towards the issues that are happening to our community in these states as well. So I guess the question, let's go to Johor first because it is the one that's coming out this Saturday. So maybe I want to ask you both a question, or maybe Tilaga, maybe you could answer first about the developments in Johor. What are the key issues that you're seeing in Johor at the state level, when it
mm.
comes to state-sponsored discrimination that we're seeing?
Yeah, thanks, dear. So before I get into the state-sponsored discrimination that we are seeing in Johor
Hmm.
first, and then later in Negeri Sembilan, I just wanted to like provide a little bit of history, like what, right? Because some of the discrimination that we are seeing against LGBT people, all of the discrimination that we are seeing, is actually very foreign, right? It's unnatural, right? Because and it's very new. It's something that we've seen in recent times, right? Like after colonialism, benda-benda macam tu. And there's a lot of documentation of queer, trans, gender diverse inclusion within local cultures, especially in Johor and Negeri Sembilan, right? And this we can find in like Michael Collett's Gender Pluralism in Southeast Asia on page 60. So like,
Wow.
so yeah, I bookmarked it just now. So, I think like in Gender Pluralism in Southeast Asia by Michael Pelletz, he talks about like how, the role of Sida, who are palace officials in Johor and Negeri Sembilan, and the role of Sida were typically performed by gender diverse people, and gender diverse people ni kita use as an umbrella term, and in modern day, they could be trans, non-binary, intersex, queer, whatever, right, along the spectrum.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things that he writes in his book is that, more generally, Sida have long been guardians and symbols of important thresholds that include a physical passageway as well as the boundaries separating ordinary mortals from embodied divinity, suffused with Sakti and Daulat. So I think this is also quite interesting because the role of Sida then is also similar to apa nama dia tu? The Bisu community in like Indonesia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like this is like quite interesting to see how queer people were included, right? In like
Mm-hmm.
everyday life, right? And I think that is quite important because to contrast with the kind of discrimination we are seeing today at the state level, right? And also some of as what you said earlier, the work that we do brings us to different states, right? So for Justice for Sisters, I think one, we do this human rights monitoring. So we do some of the law, legal stuff. And then also through this one study that we did on
Mm-hmm.
freedom of expression of trans women in Malaysia. So we did some interviews in Johor. And through that, we found some very interesting inclusive local practices, right? Which we can see through wedding rituals and
Mm.
also wedding, like ma'andam, right? Ma'andam, kan? So one of the things that we also found, like, there's this thing called Ghazal Party. So we recorded this through like older trans women from Johor
Mm.
who said that these are dance party wedding ceremonies and trans women would be invited lah untuk memeriahkan majlis, to dance, to get people to do all of that, right? To loosen up
Mm.
and all of that. And some would also perform as musicians, playing ghazal music lah. And
Wow.
what is that? The drums, right? And also
Yeah.
menyanyi sekali.
How,
So
how,
this,
sorry, how long ago
mm,
is this? Like,
this is
yeah.
like, I think, this is during Kartini's time. Because one
Mm.
of the person who shared the story was Kartini. And Katsu, like, they were
Mm.
all still like living in the time where they were experiencing this, right? What is
Okay.
interesting is that some of these practices, we also, when we were in Sampurna, we also saw some of these practices, right? Inclusive practices in weddings and things like that. But
Mm.
I think in Johor, it has eroded a bit. It's no longer intact. And they said this is because of a combination of factors, lah, like people
Mm.
moving to smaller spaces, lack of spaces, conservatism, etc. Right? So in these weddings, oh, people don't know Katsu and Kartini. When was this?
Yeah, maybe give like a period of time. It was
Oh,
it
period of
80s,
time. How
70s?
old are these people? Do you want to Google this, Dhia? Like, I think they were what? It's
Just to
60s
be clear,
maybe?
we're not talking about the Majapahit period, lah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, we're not talking about the Malacca Sultanate's period. Yeah,
It's
it's in
60s,
the last
70s
few.
lah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Or 70s, 80s even. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
Okay.
yes. Yeah, so and actually Michael Pilat's goes up to like 80s, yeah.
Mm.
And so and I think one of the things that we see, one is the dance style where people are included, etc., right? And through the music, performance. And then the second one is through what I said earlier lah, ma'andam, kan? And
Mm.
ma'andam ni it can be queer men and also trans women, gender diverse people, right? So they do like all sorts of stuff from pelamin, makeup and all those things. So in the research that we did, the trans women shared with us that, because of all the different statements at that time, when we were doing this research, I think it was 2020 maybe, there were like statements by the state Islamic departments and things like that, which prohibited people from using trans women as ma'andam, right? As a result, the volume of jobs that they used to get reduced. Some of the interviewees even had to like they couldn't make enough money to sustain themselves, so they had to go find other jobs, right?
Right.
So definitely we've seen impact lah from some of these statements on employment, right? But they also say like, there are like competition and, culturally, because of conservatism, people now prefer cisgender women and things like that.
Mm.
So these are some things that we have seen inclusive practices within Johor and Negeri Sembilan culture, local culture, but some of these practices are eroding lah because of the discrimination and conservatism that we are seeing.
That's so sad,
Is
right?
that, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, Ma'adam is not something that as
Oh, really?
I'm as exposed to. Like, I think Kelantan, like Mak
Oh,
Yong, is something that people hear a lot more about. You know,
really?
the
I
Mak,
was,
or maybe
no,
this
go
is
ahead.
me. I don't know. But
Oh,
yeah, I, it's my first time hearing about this actually. Quite
I was
sad.
hoping that, you're the token Malay in the group who would know the
Yeah.
Ma'andam, right? That I was going to make reference to. But now that you are like target likening apa ni Ma'andam dengan Mak Yong, I'm like, okay lah.
Yeah, I just want to clarify for our audiences, Mak Yong and Mak Andam are two different worlds, yeah?
Yeah.
They're not this.
No, I know they are different. I'm just saying, like, similar, like it's a culture that was and now no longer because of conservatism, right? That was my
People are still
point.
performing Mak Yong actually. Because there
Mm,
are groups that are actively preserving it,
mm,
unlike Mak Andam. Yeah. I don't
I see.
actually, I mean, I would not be surprised if in some villages somewhere in Malaysia there are still Mak Andams who are practicing, yeah.
Mm,
Uh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I think they are still practicing, but I think the volume of jobs, they can no longer sustain themselves from these jobs, right? Like they were able to previously lah. So that's something that is that one huge impact that they're seeing, I suppose.
I think the point that you're making is, this culture is kind of like disappearing with the rise of conservatism and like this the reinforcement of the binary gender constructs, can, and also the enforcement of discriminatory laws. Could you speak to that also? About the laws that we're seeing, or maybe some of the policies that are seeing in more recent years, perhaps.
Yeah, and I think this is the other thing, right? With the rise of conservatism, I think these cultural practices further erased from our memories, right?
Mm,
And when we don't remember some of these things, then it almost feel like these are like completely foreign things, right? When they used to be part and parcel of the fabric of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, etc., right?
mm-hmm.
So I think, when we talk about criminalization of LGBT people, criminalization exists both at like federal level and also at the state level, right? For us. At the federal level, of course, we have Section 377A, B, D, that criminalize carnal
Yeah.
intercourse, gross indecency, etc. Right? We will have another episode for that. But at the state level, in total, there are 52 state Sharia laws that criminalize LGBTQ people based on our sexual orientation, gender identity, and consensual sexual relations, right? And I think in Johor, there are three laws. One is Liwat, the second one is Musahaka. Musahaka is sexual relation between women, and then male person posing as a woman, right? Of course, like Liwat is no longer applicable, right? It's null and void after the Ikiputra case, right? The court has declared that this law is, Liwat cannot be enacted by state governments because it's beyond their competency, right? Legislative competency. But at the same time, there's also this fatwa against trans masculine and gender diverse people, fatwa against Bangkit. But for fatwa ni, the way the law would work is that melanggar fatwa, because under the Sharia criminal offences, there is a provision that says if you melanggar fatwa, that is an offence, right? So, with the existence of this fatwa, if somebody is seen as malanga that fatwa, then this law can be activated, right? But I don't think we have seen that. But in the recent years, I think it was like a few years ago, Johor then decided to set up, I think it was in
Right.
2023, to
Yeah.
set up a rehabilitation center for LGBT people, right? And specifically, they talked about Musahaka. And
Mm.
of course, trans people, right? I think when they announced it in 2023, I mean, it was also for LGBT people and lost it. They were talking about, putting in an allocation so that they can open it sometime, I think the next following year or something. But we don't know if this has been opened, but these are very concerning developments, lah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, it's fucked up because I'm also reading this article. Like, I remember being surprised, and I'm reading it again and being surprised again. But there, for those who don't know, they in the news article it says that they set aside 400,000 ringgit to set up this rehabilitation center. So that's a shit ton of money, right? Just for one state, just focus on bringing people back pangkal jalan, kan? Pang, did you wanna say something?
I mean, right, as somebody who has undergone conversion therapy, conversion practices, in my youth, right? Yeah, I mean, I feel totally sad for the young punk, yeah, who had to go through that. And similarly, I feel very sad for anybody else who has to go through it, lah. It's it's terrible, lah, because part of the whole thing is that you first bring yourself into a situation where you believe that this is necessary for you, you know. So, it's almost as if they can say that you were willing to do this, right? You wanted it. You can't blame anybody else. And this is the language they're using now, lah. That this is what some Malaysians want, right? They want to balik pangkal jalan. They want to do this. So the truth is, right, that society and the world has conspired to rob you of all fellowship, such that the only place you could actually go to find a bit of fellowship, a community, is where they want you to change, you know. So you become so desperate for community and fellowship that you are willing to subject yourself to having this essential part of you ripped out of you in order to just feel like you belong. And I think a lot of people are going to subject themselves to this because they didn't know better. Just like I didn't know better then. I imagine that even something like this, unfortunately, you will find a lot of gay people or queer relations supporting it because they think that this is what they need. Yeah. And that's a
Yeah.
sad thing, lah.
Thanks, Pang, for sharing that. And sorry that you had to go through that as well. Lah.
Yeah, I'm sorry
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. I wanted to go back as well to like Tilaga's point because I mentioned that they set aside like 400,000 ringgit, and but also we don't know whether the center is open or not, right? So if it's not clear already, when we make the link between LGBT rights and like discrimination and like elections and institutional discrimination, right? It's not just an issue that affects the queer community, but it's also now an issue of governance, right? Where they've
Yes,
already
exactly.
they've clearly stated they've set aside this money, but we don't even know whether it's open. We don't know what they're using it for. So an issue that affects
Yeah.
Malaysians in general.
Yeah,
And
and I think that's a great point, right? And also, I think, and here we go into the policy discussion a bit, right? Around
yeah,
like how is this money allocated in the first place, right? And what are the kind of tests? Like, is there like human rights impact assessment where or gender responsive budgeting and things like that, right? To actually look at, how funds are being allocated, right? Because rehabilitation center for like apostate and LGBT people who are so-called like deviated from Islamic teaching is a harmful practice, and it amounts to torture, right? It can amount to torture based on depending on the kind of practices. So I think it is definitely, there are several questions here, right? From whether how the money is spent, and also why the money is allocated for a program that is clearly
mm-hmm,
against human rights of all people, right? Yeah.
100%.
Aside from this rehabilitation center and all of that, I think the one other issue that we found from our research is around employment issues, right? Even in this election, when I was like looking at some of the commentaries, people are talking about the commute that people have to do from like Johor to Singapore. But of course,
Mm,
it lacks a queer perspective, right? Because a lot of queer people also end up like commuting. But what is interesting about why queer people end up doing that is because jobs, especially for trans people, jobs in Singapore does not discriminate them, based on their gender, right?
yeah.
If and that's what in our research this trans woman was talking about. She was comparing the situation in Malaysia and in Johor and other states. She would have to they would impose like dress code and things like that, right? But in Singapore, she doesn't have to she can just be herself. So I
Mm.
think this is also something that is quite interesting, right? In terms of the labor sort of quote unquote migration or movement.
Thanks for sharing that, Thilaga. Yeah, if I can add also, yeah, we talked about, these direct laws, employment issues. Also in the media monitoring that we've done, there's also, violations of like personal information of people living with HIV as well that we've seen. I think it's really important because the work that we do is, all about ensuring people living with HIV have the right to dignity and that things like that. And media standards should also uphold that too. Sometimes too, but I think in Johor we're also seeing, local media bodies not respecting the autonomy of people with HIV. So there was like a case where a person was convicted in court, and their HIV status, which had nothing to do with the charge, was brought up um,
Mm,
during
mm,
court session and also subsequently reported in the media.
mm.
So yeah, again, these issues of local governance, standards, accountability, those things are just not being addressed, at the state level where it should be.
Yep.
Okay, folks. I think we spent a lot of time talking about the state level developments in Johor. Let's take a little break before we move on to the developments in Negeri Sembilan. Welcome back, folks. So now we're moving on to my state, Negeri Sembilan, the ninth state. We want to look at the documentation that is available about the kind of institutional discrimination that we are seeing towards LGBT people in the state in the last few years, and maybe also what the impact that has on the community.
Thanks, dear. Yeah, so again, like what we discussed earlier in terms of context, similar to Johor, we've seen a lot of documentation of like queerness and gender diverse people within the
Yes.
palace of Negeri Sembilan, right? But that said, again, we are seeing an erosion of like rights of like LGBT people in general in Negeri Sembilan. And in Negeri Sembilan, there are five laws. Initially, there were four laws against LGBT people. And these laws, again, similarly, were under the Sharia criminal offences enactment. And these are liwat musahaka and berpakaian perempuan and also, sorry, berpakaian lelaki, which was later introduced, after a few, after 2010, definitely.
Mm,
So in Negeri Sembilan, sexual intercourse against the order of nature is also criminalized, right? But similarly, because of the EP3 decision, so liwat and sexual intercourse against the order of nature is null, effectively is null and void, lah, right? But the other laws, may still be in effect. But what is interesting in Negeri Sembilan is that this is one of the first states where we saw, legal challenges against criminalization of LGBT people, right? So in 2010, this group of trans women in Negeri Sembilan filed a legal challenge of the state enactment that criminalized their gender identity and gender expression. And because of this law, there were like a lot of rapes, a lot of violence, a lot of harassment, and this was heavily documented in like the Human Rights Watch report, I'm Scared to Be a Woman, right? And a
mm,
lot of this documentation was also then shared in court, right? And I think many of us here were also responding to the cases of arrest at that time. And it was like very emotional, I suppose, and very intense types of arrests and violations that we saw, like, trans women being arrested in massive, huge numbers. Again, mass arrests. And interestingly, in Bahau, a few years during, I think it was in 2014, a group of trans women were arrested in Bahau at a wedding party because they were
Mm,
invited to this wedding party, and they were there, and about 15, 16 of them, I'm not sure of the numbers, a huge number of them were arrested, and they were sentenced to a fine, and also they were given a prison sentence for 3 or 4 days. Within the 3 or 4 days, their heads were shaven and all of that, right? So very dehumanizing, very humiliating treatment. And when the trans women challenged this law, and they got a very good decision uh, in 2014 in the Court of Appeal, the law was declared null and void, so it could not be applied. But
yeah.
the following year, the government filed an appeal and overturned the decision on a technicality. In essence, what I'm trying to get at is that there are laws that criminalizing LGBT people in Negeri Sembilan,
Mm,
and there are legal challenges that has come up from Negeri Sembilan in the north itself, right? And these
yeah.
legal challenges, one important thing is that they've had nationwide impact, right? Because of the Negeri Sembilan case, nationwide, for a few years, there was a chilling effect, right, in terms of arrest and detention. Arrests
Mm,
of trans women like really dropped significantly, right? So, even action at like one state can actually have a knock-on effect, right? It can
mm.
have such a huge domino effect on the laws everywhere, just like in the Iki Putra case, right? It was a state law that was challenged, but the impact tu besar, kan?
No, I just wanted to add because I think that's a great analysis of what the law looks like that directly criminalize LGBT people and our identities, right? But I think an important thing to remember as well is that there are also indirect laws that affect LGBT people as well, particularly with regards to freedom of expression as well. We see that happen a lot at the federal level, but there was also a case that we supported in the past couple of years, which actually just was settled this year about a charge of menghina agama Islam because of a debate topic that was held in university about essentially the debate topic was if there was evidence that showed homosexuality was actually not a sin in Islam, would you reinterpret or reprint the Quran to, make that distinction, right? That was a debate topic, and it got taken out of context, taken to Facebook. There was a police report made about it, and unfortunately, somebody was charged with the Menghina Agama Islam law. So even though it was an intellectual and academic discussion, which doesn't
Betul.
necessarily have kan it's like an
Yeah,
academic space where people are allowed
yeah.
should be allowed to have these sort of really in-depth discussions about theology and government accountability and things like that kan but under the guise of Mihin Agama Islam more specifically what was said by Kementerian Pendidikan Malaysia KPM was that debate topics but you shouldn't touch on issues mengacau sensitiviti agama, kaum, and isu-isu yang boleh menggugat keselamatan negara. So again, there's this even at the state level, we're seeing this rhetoric of national security,
Yeah.
LGBT issues being a national security issue, or just talking about some different forms of understanding of LGBT identities within the context of Islam is seen as a national threat. Kan? So this is something that happened at the state level in Negeri Sembilan, but this is also something that I think folks are familiar with also at the federal level, where
Yeah.
these sort of arbitrary laws, these vague laws, here it's in Negeri Sembilan is the Sharia law, but at the federal level we have other
Like,
forms,
like
the penal code.
the
Yeah.
Printing, Press, and Publication Act, for example, right? In
Yes.
censorship of publications, etc.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So those laws also very arbitrary and are, actively being used also against the community to kind of stifle any sort of public discourse about LGBT issues. So thanks, Thilaga. Thanks, folks, for giving a little bit more of a analysis of the developments in Negeri Sembilan that affect LGBT people. with regards to the elections, there's not much hoo ha yet coming out from Negeri Sembilan. Um, it's not, maybe that's not the word to use, but yeah,
I
you
love
get what I
it.
mean.
We all got what you meant.
Yeah, yes, because pencalonan pun won't happen until the 16th.
18, 18.
Oh, sorry, 18th of July. So we shall see what is to come in these coming weeks, leading up to that, the kind of campaigns that are coming out. So hopefully, we'll be monitoring that closely, and I hope you folks do too if you're voting in Miss Milan. So what we're gonna do next after this is we're gonna, because we talked a lot about right the state level developments and how that affects LGBT people. Now we're gonna contextualize that a bit more and talk about what we can do in anticipation of the elections.
Welcome back, everyone. Pang has been told that he was uncharacteristically quiet throughout this episode, especially because I really don't know very much about Johor and Negeri Sembilan. And my idea of participating
Mm.
in elections go beyond just voting, lah, right?
Yeah.
I really
Hmm.
don't think that we should only get to exercise our rights as citizens once every 4 or 5 years, right?
Hmm.
We should get to exercise it all the year throughout the years. The thing is, right, I think we wanted to talk about elections, but you notice we also focus a little bit about, some of the shitty things lah they do to queer people in these states. I mean, maybe it's just an excuse for us to talk about these things in these states lah. So we will get to them one by one eventually. Yeah. So all the other states, yeah, don't FOMO. We will get to you and your shitty things as well. Okay. Uh, but while we get to these things, one of the things that I think we also want to highlight is the fact that while they try to oppress us, while they try to deny our rights, we still exist. We are still living our lives, contributing, voting, being a citizen, claiming our rights wherever
Yeah,
we can. Yeah? I mean, Negeri Sembilan
Mm.
is famous for having the spiciest chili in Malaysia. Right? You cannot be
Damn.
spicy without queer people. Okay? Queer people add
right.
the spiciness to your life. Yeah. So we are
I
here
thought we
in this sec.
added kunyit to people's lives.
No, no, no. Thilaga,
So it's just
we
spice, all kinds of spices.
all kinds. Yeah. We can
Cinnamon, star anise,
yeah yeah.
jintan
We can
manis.
we can masak rendang. We can masak merah. We can masak pelangi. Yeah. It's everything lah. Yeah. Don't limit ourselves just to kunyit. Okay. So, this is just a meandering spiel to say we also have dreams, we also have hopes. So we need
Yeah,
to also talk about what we want to see, right? And what are the changes that we can make, uh, even in very small ways, right? Federal changes, very big, very far away. Maybe state level changes, maybe city level changes. Are within our reach, lah. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry. And I
go
think
ahead.
that's a great, interesting point, right? One, I think there are two things, right? Like even in the stuff that we talked about, the trans women in Negeri Sembilan, right? What they represented, right? As a sort of resistance, right? In challenging these laws and like really visibilizing not just the discrimination against them, but discrimination against trans women all over Malaysia, right?
yeah,
So I think this also presents like already, right, within our states, within our lifetime, all these really great examples, right? And also on the point that you were saying, right, in terms of like the levels in where we make changes, right, in terms of like institutional change, right? And I think looking at Philippines and the strategies by the activists from Philippines would be very interesting, right? Because they knew that at the federal central level, it was difficult to pass the social discrimination bill, right?
Yeah.
So then what they did was to go on to the district level, to the barangay levels, to where then we saw like tons of anti-discrimination ordinances being passed, right? So there is like really connection, right? Because for people in Malaysia, we are seeing discrimination happening at the state level and not just at the federal level, right?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, lah, understanding this context and like also learning from like what you are saying, right, Pa? And looking at the examples even within our region, I think that's quite interesting. Dia, you want to say
Agree.
something?
Go ahead, Dia.
No, I just want to echo what Tilaga was saying, and also want to, because what Tilaga was saying reminded me of something you said a while ago to me, Pang, or like you shared in a forum about how, queer people are, I forget the exact wording you use, but like we're the closest holders of the Constitution, right? Which is practicing our democratic rights, kan? Which is also a part of, which is something else we can do besides voting to participate in democracy. And it just, reminds me of that the trans women case is a pure example of, participating in democracy, you know, by, in this particular case, looking at their rights not only as citizens of Negeri Sembilan, or not citizens, but like people who were in Negeri Sembilan, and also their rights under the federal constitution.
Exactly.
Kan?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought that reminded me of that thing you said.
Yeah, it's a concept introduced to me at a conference I attended, a human rights conference I attended in Bangkok,
Mm,
where someone said that actually marginalized people are holders of the constitution because they so deeply believe that their rights are promised to them in
mm,
the constitution that they hold, and they bring the constitution to life. They give meaning to it.
yes.
We are the holders of the constitution. Yeah. So thanks for reminding me of that. So yeah, it's something I really hold to my heart lah. And sometimes it can also exist symbolically, right? We by through our existence, through our refusal to be denied our rights, right? Through our refusal to just accept the shitty things they do to us, right?
Mm,
We keep the constitution alive, you know?
yes.
Yeah. And so I want to bring in like at this point, what are the things people want to see at a state level, what are the laws we want to change, and what kind of inclusion practices do we want to also see? And of course, we are not talking about things that can be changed in this coming election, lah. But
Mm,
if we start thinking now, right, in a long-term thing, lah, we can also start thinking about what are the things we need to put in place, who are the people we need to put in place, and what are the strategies we need to have, and then the networks we need to have in order for us to reach those goals lah, however many elections later, right, Tilaga?
Yeah, yeah. And also the other thing is like all governments should be accountable to people, right? And because as like the state, you have obligations. It is simple as that, right? But because when you're holding the role of governance and administration and things like that, there are some obligations that the states have, whether they're federal government or state government. Looking at, candidates that are more progressive and things like that. At the same time, regardless of the government, holding them accountable to their obligations, right? I think that's also important.
How do we do that? How do we hold them accountable?
You know, yeah, I guess this is where it's not just voting, right? I mean, of course, we are talking about voting in this episode because we know as queer people we are disenfranchised as voters, right? They don't see us as a bloc, right? What they see us is like scapegoats or, whatever, but not as a voters bloc, right? Beyond that, I think it's the point that you were making, right? Like beyond voting, then there are other things that we also can do to like participate in democracy, right? And I
Yes.
think these the movement building, the organizing, and things like that that will also then push any government, right? Because at the end of the day, sometimes regardless of the government in power, like if the people change, public opinion changes, they have to like follow lah, kan?
Mm-mm.
So there's that as well lah. What do you think? What do you all think?
Yeah.
Am I too optimistic? Sounds like it.
Maybe.
Who would have thought, right? Like,
No, I definitely agree with that as well because I think another point that I want to make, and maybe bringing it back to what I was saying about the rehabilitation center in Johor, right? That apart from exercising our rights, voting, and also specifically only looking at LGBT issues as just LGBT issues, we have to also view them as intersectional issues as well. For example, the rehabilitation in Johor with the use of funds, right? It's a governance issue
mm,
sekarang ni juga. So I think as queer people, allies, and just general voters in general, we have to understand and start to really think about when it comes to elections and the campaigns that kind of scapegoat LGBT people. We have to start really asking, holding our leaders accountable and asking them, is this the best use of public resources? Kan? Do we really want to spend this much money, spend this much time allocating public resources towards this marginalized community? Kan? So it becomes that matter of governance and democracy that is just way more than just LGBT issues saja. Yeah, so I think that's one way we can also go about this as well, taking it out of the context of just LGBT rights, but also these larger other governance, democratic issues juga lah.
Yeah, agree. And I know that right now maybe we don't have many listeners, but I'm quite sure that some of you there, among the few who are listening to us, you have people who care about you. You have people who care about laws and policies that could influence you, or that could impact you, that could deprive your liberty. And and yes, of course, I know many of you will have friends trying to tell you, convince you, to save up enough money to leave the country, right? But maybe one day you will. But for now, you're here, lah. You're here. You can. You're stuck here with us, right? You're stuck here with us. So these are the things
Might
we
as well do
can do
something,
to
right?
do together.
Yeah,
The question I keep wanting to ask queer people is just to say, for so long, the shame has driven us underground, right? The shame, being told that we are dirty, perverted, sinful, it has kept us very lonely and alone, you know. But then bad things happen to us, and then we have no one to turn to. But now, we have groups, we have activists, we have communities trying to do something, help you, right? So you're not
yeah,
alone. We have people that we can talk to now and grow this base, slowly, so that we're safe. I know that a lot of queer people just, we're in the closet for a reason. We are afraid. We have a lot to lose. But then you fall in love, or you have people who care about you. You care about people. The question then that we have is, how can you make this country a better place for the person you care about? If not for yourself, for your partner, for your godchildren, whatever. Let's work together. Let's find a way to work together with people who will uphold democracy and human rights. And if they do shitty things to us, we get rid of them. So remember, we have between 7 to 9%. We are 7 to 9% of the human of the Malaysian population. If we are all able to just stand up together, we can influence elections. One day lah. I'm railing myself off the tangent now. I just want to say, start organizing now. Don't be afraid. There are people around you. There are people who care about you. Reach out and organize together.
and I suppose like there are support available if people want to organize, right? So like for example, folks can reach out to Jijaka if they
yes,
want to like get support for like to organize or whatever. And again, like I also want to bring this back when the conversation around elections and democracy and things like that, and participation, right? To this thing that was popularized by Fahmi Reza, right? Like rakyat ialah boss. So when you are like when election time ni, these are like people pekerja-pekerja yang datang for you to like tengok their CV and like yeah, this is a job application, right?
Mm-mm.
So, as an employer, you should like see whether they fit the bill or not. And I suppose as marginalized folks, right, we don't have to give power to our oppressors, right? We should demand and seek for one is decriminalization, right, and repeal of laws. Also because like a lot of these laws are already unconstitutional, right? Like for example, the Negeri Sembilan law, already it has already gone to court and all of that. There's already a lot of evidence in terms of the harms that it can create. So all of these laws can be repealed, right? And as for the Liwat laws, we have the EP3 precedents, right? Yeah, so that's one. And of course, like I think the second thing is what Dia talked about in terms of like the budget allocations, right? I think
Yeah.
this is very important, right? This is why we need like better adun, right? And better opposition even within DUN, right? Because so that there's better check and balances. So that, like when these things are tabled, people can at least question, right? Like,
Mm-mm.
why are these things happening? And also put in place, and going back to what Dia said, putting in place mechanisms, right? So that before apa nama dia ni, budgets like this or activities or government programs are proposed, they go through like really stringent or like comprehensive human rights impact assessments, right? So that we know we can prevent the harms and the human rights violations from happening.
And on that note also, right, I just want to point out that, of course, as queer people, we are not only interested in LGBT laws, rights, lah, right? We can also be very interested in many of the other human rights issues in Malaysia, including, environmental issues, climate change issues. Looking at the candidates, who will uh, who will be able to honor and uphold the principles and values that will,
Mm,
you know,
Mm-mm.
uh, be good for not just LGBT people, but for other marginalized
exactly.
communities, for the
Yeah.
stateless, for the fisher folks, and, for the Orang Asli. It's a way to see it holistically, lah. We look at the track record across many things so that we also prevent them from ever using one issue against another issue, right? Because those are the tactics of actually politicians with very little imagination. And we don't want politicians with very little imagination in our government. We want people who can make space and see the importance of different people, different Malaysians, and even non-Malaysians contributing to the making of this community that we call a community of care, lah. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Mm,
No,
mm,
I definitely agree with that as well, Pang. Like, at the very least, if they don't talk about LGBT people, what other marginalized communities that is speaking up about, and I think that's be great,
Yeah.
a really great point. And also, like, relating to that as well, if not marginalized communities, what are the topics that they're talking about? Kan? What are their focuses on? Healthcare, ke, education, ke,
mm.
jobs, ke, kan? Or are they just,
Development,
yeah, can
economy. Yeah.
exactly, can. And I also think when they're talking about these things, because they're trying to solve problems, right? So I think in your analysis and us as voters, we should think about when they're trying to solve these problems, are they actually trying to solve the problems or are they just trying to find people to blame, right? Are they trying to find the community to blame? And I think that's a really important thing to think about when you're in the voting booth and you're thinking about the person you're going to check the mark for. And so think, yeah, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, totally, right? And also think about it in terms of development and capitalism and all that as well. Whatever you're interested in. I mean, do you know, for example, in Malacca, there are developments that are displacing the Kristang fisher folks, right? That are preventing
Mm.
them from their livelihood because the resettlement has muddied the waters where they fish.
Oh
And so they
no.
are unable to fish now. And Johor, there are developments that are also affecting, poorer people and displacing them. So, who do we turn to, right? Who
Mm,
can we ask these questions to? And while we think about who we can turn to and who we can ask these questions to, an interesting way to look at this is who is likely to give you a good answer, who's likely to listen to you, you
Mm,
know? Yeah,
mm,
And also the kind of mechanisms that we want these people to put in place, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that these things don't end up being like reliant on people who can hear us, but
mm.
things that become part and parcel of like governance, kan? Because otherwise, then, penat lah. Everybody has to like, keep going to these people to be heard, right? And that also then creates all this like power dynamics between politicians and like the people. So so maybe we can just share like what do you folks do when you go and vote? Are there things that you do? Do you have like rituals?
I just want to say, if you drive, call around, go together, couple, or offer to drive people who cannot get there by themselves, older folks, whatever. Make a community event out of it, right? It'll be very fun. It'll give you something to talk about. You can go mama after that, and bitch about how hot or how rainy it was. This is what I would do, lah. Yeah.
I think also because voting, especially for people who migrate to other states, like me, for example, from Negeri Sembilan to KL, is also a good opportunity to be like, hey, friends who are still in those states that you used to live in, you can reach out to them as well, not only just hang out socially, but also maybe to bring them to vote sekali. Say, hey, korang balik Negeri Sembilan tak vote? Macam tu.
Just like that, exactly like that.
Just like that.
Okay.
Kan?
And also, you can be a pacha,
Hmm.
right? Do state elections do pachas? They do, right?
Yes.
What does it stand for again? PACA, Pacha, is a role that ordinary Malaysians can play. You can, go look up your favorite candidate, your favorite party, and offer a volunteer to help count votes, check the votes
Oh,
during the day
Ah,
itself, polling and counting agent. Yes, okay. It's actually very fun. Like you learn something. Sometimes it's also frustrating because there are things you want to. There might be things you want to bantah, but then the person in the charge of that room doesn't want to listen to you, which happened to me a lot. Uh, but it'd be great lah because it's one way for you to actually participate quite actively as well. Yeah.
I didn't know you were like a polling and counting agent
I did it that year that Tony Kasim was running.
in her constituency.
I think so. And then I went to a gay sauna after that. And I watched the election news with all the gay people in the TV room.
So eventful.
yeah,
I'm
Okay.
going to
that's
turn this into a play, I think. Maybe a musical. Yeah.
so as you can see, there's different ways to participate in democracy. You can even do it in a sauna.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, folks. Yeah, I think that was a great segue into, the closing, and maybe for us to, list out some calls to action for you listeners, for voters, who want to be more informed and participate in democracy. Sorry, it is 10:30 p.m. I'm sorry. Yeah, participate in democracy. So we're gonna link all these resources that we are gonna share in the episode description. First of all, is this one by Awani? It's like a PRU monitor. It's essentially, where you can see all the list of the candidates, and just to monitor the elections and what's going on. So that's a great resource there. If you are a postal voter, there's also there very clear instructions on how to do that, linked in again the episode description. And you can do that earlier the better, so that your vote counts and does get in on time. So please be sure to do that, especially if you are a postal voter. But if you want to take a more active role in the elections, you could also volunteer to be a pamantau. This is something that Bersih does every election, if I recall correctly. They always are calling for folks to be pamantaus at the polling centers, to make sure there's no foul play and things like that, right? So that's a really good way to um, be a good citizen. There's also Teen Up Malaysia. I think they're a lot more active on Facebook now, but this is where you can see a lot of the breakdown of the elections and a lot of education, empowerment, and mobilization for electoral reform. So do check that out as well. Again, all this is linked in the episode description. So, and with that, we thank you so much for listening to this episode 3 of Sembang Songsang. Thanks so much, Thilaga, Pang, and our producer, recorder, everything else person, Ineza, for being here as well. And we are looking forward to see you in the next Sembang Songsang episode. Until then, have a very day time.
Bye.
Bye, folks. Thanks so much.
Bye.